보자고 친구 절로디 양도 동야 인셔.
To all. We start our program with the singing of Tibetan national anthem and a minute of silence in honor and remembrance of our martyrs.
아니 매우 참아가 같이 식체전에 절로도 동로 넣으셔. 보자고 친구 절로 주니 섬 샴라 보시노 니스지기 자제 보호 법문함지 보탐바 잡서그 체도 랑서 롱추 동치와 루동켄농가 루동농켄남라 니냥은 갑자까마 지시어인 아니 럭제 고두셔이 그치나 아니 샤버르 뭔가 착도 갈마 죽일라게 데린 게 자름동 대회에 선신어야인
Welcome speech by Ms. Kama Chukila, the President of Tibetan Community Swiss and Liechtenstein. Kute Chushi Chimbuchola, Kujangu the Subeto, Ani Taride, Zamling, Doa Mi Topta, today Nimude, Ani Swiss Liechtenstein, Turumima, Tixuka Choke, Kutinang Beki, Ani Zehote, Chukyu Yang Beki, on the Europe Chidu, Kongo Tute Yazula Chotang, Titishinki, Kongo Tunju, Tilechula Cho. ngaranzu krimima sokshe da gule tumi namba sane Swiss sane Swiss pögi tumi sokbe soksu suri yudula sane shunu Europe sane shunu ani sokshe chusangla sube tundu sokbe ki kunan suchik tanda pegide dide shingi mimang tari 초다 카타를 보내 아니 제가 망타우저지 독시네 심슈 댐베토네 대바데라 상만라 삼주 슈바다 주치 슈에이 딱 표현한 게 내당디 먼저기 인구토네 주먹을 뱉어 변나라 나니네 치네 아니 집안 로시 야되네 아니 회전 나타나 땅치네 아니 파만에 카테네 먼저 벽이 리슈추 곰시 이게 아니 종당 매백이 탑시 아니 벽이 벽이 어디 매봤어요기 탑시 디바라텔 DNA 딱지 지치는 양 벽이 강라 독수 땅 아니 나저기 탑시 단다 내암기 아니 야 철식이 돈에 야 벽이 망부질라 간에 중바디 다 표현은 게 벽이 마세바치네 아니 쉔게츠기 아니 먼저라 끼딘데 아니 속 벤라 존에 땅난 게 요리 딘낭 난게 요되잖아 딱 코나서 가르쳐요면 내 땅 등어서라 신도 연구민도디 얘는 알아서 치게가 버슝에 품이기 땅말레 타가기 샘기 심슈디 다 리파 침체네 먼저 다리 좀반 낭시기 아니 소셜리텐슈타인 프리미만 굳이 가르치네 냠슈나로 나서 보고 쉬어이 대다 잡직도 하는 건저기 숨주 투젠디 아니 이틀리기 계속 롬라 아니 시계 체백이 레고 치네 아니 굳이 난게 요래 델라이네 미만 강망망기 개치 시체네 표현한게 표미기 예스네민도 오스네민도 안 되게 탑신당에 된 건주 인도 전에 나랑서 미래래기 토네 아니 주주 테스트당 아니 페샤 테스트 르당 망치니 롬라 페로낭 슈에이 그러미만게 토네 아니 바스 부주 슈에기 베즈 슈고유 이미 납주다 든주 somna kyata ngapchus mashi ruminto tumi kyune ngazu seraji kyuyo dimatsebe ani tumi yante gemba chota ani lege gembe ta tinde tone romla pema tongela ani ngazu primi mangi tone zurik nanglo la kombrichik yang kuju shugu yus shue yi ta tamatele nyege yushi ani inji tone shu chobachi. Since 1959 when a decade after Communist Party came into power, they illegally invaded and occupied Tibet, resulting into deaths of millions of Tibetans. Now, in recent times, boarding schools, children as small as 4 years old are sent away from parents into forced boarding schools. This amount to the illegal denial of basic rights and opportunities to learn Tibetan language, both spoken and written, culture, religion, tradition, and our way of life. Thus, Chinese Communist Party is bent on to change the Tibetan identities at all costs. DNA collection drive without the consent of Tibetans in the 7 prefectures of so-called Tibet Autonomous Regions. According to Human Rights Watch and Citizens Lab, China is using biometric technology for surveillance and control. Recent zero-COVID policy. Communist Party locked up COVID-positive Tibetans in a very barbaric manner in a makeshift COVID facilities without following any of the COVID protocols laid down by the World Health Organization. CCP also locked up non-COVID patients in the same facilities with COVID-positive patients, thus risking the lives of healthy Tibetans. This kind of draconian and inhumane method have escalated the number of COVID among the Tibetan population in Tibet drastically. This led to unnecessary prolonged lockdown, which created loss of livelihood and loss of existing limited freedom of movement. CCP's imposition of COVID rules without proper study and without systematic ways and means has led to immense frustration amongst public, and it also has led to avoidable deaths. In recent times, we have all seen the mass uprising in China due to failed zero-COVID policy and the heavy-handedness of the Chinese government. It has proved that under this draconian rule, no one is safe and free. According to safeguard defenders, China has illegally opened more than 100 Chinese overseas police stations in 14 known different countries where investigation is going on. There could be more such illegal offices yet to be discovered. These are established secretly without permit against the law of the country in which they exist. Such outfits are in close cooperation with the United Front Work Department. Some of the countries where such outfits exist share border with Switzerland. This could pose a threat to the democratic principles on which Switzerland stands. I strongly urge the government of Switzerland to be highly vigilant and sensitive of such entities. Tibet support groups all over the world is sending a petition to Thermo Fisher Company, who is supplying DNA collecting kits to the Chinese police in occupied Tibet. As president of the Tibetan community in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, the largest organization in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, I have signed the petition. I urge all of you to sign this petition to strengthen the call, because this would help maybe refrain from sending such kits to China. U.S. Congressional on China has urged the UN Human Rights Chief to open an inquiry into China's colonial boarding school in Tibet. TCSL urged all the leaders of the free world, human rights defenders, individuals and organizations to urge the UN Human Rights Chief to open such inquiry into China's colonial boarding school in Tibet, like what the U.S. Congressional on China did. Because erasing and changing identities is a form of cultural genocide, and China is imposing cultural genocide in Tibet. I strongly caution Xi Jinping on whereabouts of Panchen Lama, Gyaltsab Nyima, although she and his government consistently lie to the world that Panchen Lama is safe and studying in China, but they could not produce either audio or video proof supporting their claim. Tibetan community in Switzerland and Liechtenstein demand Xi Jinping and his government for immediate release of all political prisoners in occupied Tibet without any precondition. On the International Human Rights Day, I, along with all the fellow Tibetans, pay homage to all those political prisoners who had laid down their lives for the cause. Remember that according to Freedom House, Tibet is the least free country next to Syria. So you could imagine. Safe Tibet, free Tibet. Tamadela ani kundu jumshi chimbucho kuze shabeten bata ani ngaranzuge mizi di nanglola ani pyo nangi pyomitso gyawrumchi jeechine gyawrumchi podalala ani dende shutoyaki nganzu rewa damyolam shuyo di tola ani di tenda dubyala ngaranzu pyomitsoleke lenge shuri di lenge di dubayina an tenda di dubyaki nganzu ge rewa chige chimbuchi toku doshuye Pegalo! 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 Safe Tibet! Safe Tibet! Safe Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
Cambodia, Andinola, Memonola, Cambo, Yahoja Senior than Leona, good Chindela Peona.
Now we start our slogan. We demand human rights. We We demand human rights.
In Tibet.
We demand human rights.
In Tibet.
Tibet is burning.
China is lying.
Tibet is burning.
China is lying.
Tibet is burning.
China is lying.
Release, release.
Benjamin Lama.
Release, release.
Benjamin Lama.
Release, release.
Benjamin Lama.
We want justice.
In Tibet.
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 Release political prisoners.
In Tibet.
Release political prisoners.
In Tibet.
Release political prisoners.
In Tibet.
We want
Freedom.
We want
Freedom.
We want
Freedom.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
Shame on China
Shame, shame.
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 Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
We demand human rights
In Tibet.
We demand human rights
In Tibet.
We demand human rights
In Tibet.
Tibet is burning
China is lying.
Tibet is burning
China is lying.
Tibet is burning
China is lying.
Release, release
Political prisoners.
Release, release
Political prisoners.
Release, release
Benjamin Lama.
We want justice
In Tibet.
We want justice
In Tibet.
We want justice
In Tibet.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
Shame on China
Shame, shame.
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 Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Learning 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 Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Hey Gyalo
Hey, Galo.
Hey Gyalo
Hey, Galo.
Hey Gyalo
Hey, Galo.
Hey Gi Takpo
Pay me in.
Hey Gi Takpo
Pay me in.
Hey Gi Takpo
Pay me in.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
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 We demand human rights
In Tibet.
We demand human rights
In Tibet.
Tibet is burning
China is lying.
Tibet is burning
China is lying.
Release Release
Benjamin Lama.
Release Release
Benjamin Lama.
We want justice
In Tibet.
We want justice
In Tibet.
We want justice
In Tibet.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Tibet belongs to
Tibetans.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
Long live
Dalai Lama.
United Nations United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
United Nations
Justice in Tibet.
Shame on China
Shame, shame.
Shame on Chinese government
Shame, shame.
Shame on Chinese government
Shame, shame.
Shame on Chinese government
Shame, shame.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Tibetan language
It's not a crime.
Free Tibet
Free Tibet.
Save Tibet
Save Tibet.
Save Tibet
Save Tibet.
Shame on you
Shame, shame.
COVID-19 COVID-19 COVID-19
이제라 요로 부르기 전인 전적대 적조 주송라기 아니 랭크톤도에 선신어에 주송라
Next, we have a speech by Tibetan Youth Associations of Europe, Vice President Chesama.
Давами топtan ymadela tari Europe peruşunu tünzo samula dişle şuye. Da tari gümze di ngonza de tari zomya de tenda di pölafa tanda corona naza di chungne pölafa neji damon de chungne. Mi corona nangyo da mi manangyo nimbo shane kala dakta matene mi dakta matene diko ne ngonza pöva de zenjo bola denge gembe royala toptan di lengore. Pörangze rawa de da gen di ngonza samula yore. Dile gembeला 강왕의 도래 레버시다 지역에 디고네 당화통의 치카시스 인지도네요. So good afternoon. Thank you for your coming today. Between June 2016 and July 22, police may have collected between roughly 919,000 and 1.2 million samples, representing between 1/4 and 1/3 of Tibetan's total population. Police have targeted men, women and children for DNA collection outside of any ongoing criminal investigation. In some cases, police have targeted Buddhist monks. Authorities have justified mass DNA collection as a tool to fight crime, find missing people and ensure social stability. But without checks on police powers, police in Tibet will be free to use a complete mass DNA database for whatever purpose they see fit. DNA collection is particularly sensitive. In comparison to other biometric markers, DNA samples have the power not only to identify an individual, but also the individual's genetic relatives. DNA samples taken from different people and stored in police-run databases can be compared to determine what kind of genetic relationship exists between these people. Comparisons can be made even without the knowledge or consent of these individuals. This means that the potential coverage of police-run DNA databases extends beyond those individuals from whom the police collected DNA samples, and includes the individuals' immediate and distant relatives and any potential offspring. We urge the United Nations to take actions in this case against the Chinese government. Högyalo!
We demand human rights! We demand human rights! Gammal Höne! Shame on Chinese government! Shame on Chinese government! Stop killing! Stop killing! Stop torturing! Stop torturing! No religious freedom! No religious freedom! No religious freedom! No education freedom! No education freedom! Shame on Chinese government! Shame on Chinese government! Long show! Long show! Long show! Long show! Long show! Long show! Tibet is never the part of China! Tibet is never the part of China! Shimla Sus Pumitsopi Tsotso Siri Indulani Lingadondu Sonshinwai Siri Indul Peruno.
Next, we have a speech by the President of Tibetan Women Association, Sri Rila.
Ja.
Milana nebe uchi. Sino ko sa tamkan sumsala, kusa ngwen to saranta beto. Sri geje jomi thosan ki nyamdala phebeki. Chiti Europe chiti thotela. 다마신게 시스터 리텐션 베리 메마 징서기 소소 소시즈 베티비 넘버 시수 넘버 데미 베트마하게 고지 넘버 고케메오시 딩예니 시스코자 덴지 공화칠렌 슈길라다 차로 넘버 한테테신기 메마 세신난게 요와 니시스터네 백부에서발 섭시데 드린테가 팽이 요와 삼지당 아니 포천나 学仪 소셜리데스탄 베리메만 진속이 소소소셜스베기 팀이남블라드린데我的古镇那不得了，因他们的特级些学仪，咱们先给兄弟明白错不开给。대자외기 리그변 안되기 미마드린 대표는 신기인 상면염도 강도 페로나 슈행이 지단이 그런지 배기 된다 뒷맛에 봐도 대자외기 리그변 안 그런지 리긴 개심부지 차대요래 대선사 아니 가다 띵이는 얘기 쉬어나 시체네 중대 민배 처박하기 대자외기 리그배대 상면도 신념도 페로나 슈행이 다 드린데 저미 토땡기 니무데라 로다리시 단당하라서 일품일 현소니 도시는 세고 세다 도스잡는 기요래 다다 카사 케이모 도시는 판에 세고 세다지 도시오소 근데 부유다 인진이자 돈이도 다 드린하라서 그 슈디께서 대념적 개소다 저미 토땡기 리공시 다나신기 자기에게 들니 도시에 태돈 주고여자 하는 게 되는 말이 비유통들로 먹어 제 이주통들로学习 Today on December 10th, International Human Rights Day, we commemorate and celebrate the life and the work of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 for his non-violent struggle for the liberation of Tibet. His Holiness has dedicated his life to the promotion of peace, justice, and human rights for all. His Holiness constantly advocated for the rights of the Tibetan people. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has constantly advocated for the rights of the Tibetan people, women's empowerment, and all other oppressed people around the world. Today, on Human Rights Day, we recognize and thank His Holiness for his tireless effort to promote human rights and the protection of fundamental freedom for all. The government of People's Republic of China deprives citizens of their rights on a sweeping scale and systematically curtails freedom as a way to retain power. The Chinese government abuses human rights in Tibet, including arbitrary imprisonment, torture, forced labor, restriction on the freedom of speech, assembly, the suppression of religious and cultural rights, and the systematic destructions of monasteries and monuments. The world has turned blind eye to the massive human rights crisis happening in Tibet, East Turkestan, Hong Kong, Uyghur, Inner Mongolian, and Taiwan. China continues to abuse human rights, including the extrajudicial killings of the dissidents, torture, forced labor, arbitrary detention, suppression of religious beliefs, and the mistreatment of minorities. People living under the rule of Xi Jinping face increasing restriction on their civil liberties. People face the risk of being arbitrarily arrested and detained for their political views, and the government has increased its campaign to repression against religious and ethnic minorities. Since the Chinese occupation of Tibet by armed force in the 1949, Chinese government has stripped Tibetans of their basic human rights guaranteed under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, annihilating the distinct identity of Tibetans, denying them their inherent dignity of being human despite widespread disapproval of a criticism from the international community. The United Nations has not taken any action against China over its human rights record. As of 2021, the UN main bodies, including the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly, have passed several resolutions condemning Chinese human rights abuses and have called the investigation and accountability. However, these resolutions are non-binding and have limited impact. China has also constantly opposed any proposed measure to hold it accountable for the human rights violation. In the name of the zero COVID-19 policy, the Chinese government started conducting the COVID-19 tests, which led to inhuman behavior among the Tibetans and the Chinese officials. The Chinese Communist Party has forcefully taken Tibetans regardless of their age. Even a 2-year-old child could not escape the torture of the CCP. But the reports, thousands of the Tibetan people were inhumanly dragged in a good carrier and were placed in a mass internment camp. Irrespective of their COVID reports, both positive and negative were put into the same camp with unhygienic washrooms and toilets. If they go against their commands, they are threatened to exploit their basic rights. They were served stale and decaying food. They were exploited mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially. Today, though we commemorate the day of the International Human Rights Day, Tibetans are forbidden to express their views and thoughts that go against China's propaganda, openly and creatively. Tibetan writers, intellectuals, and the singers are not allowed to have open discussion about the condition of Tibetans in Tibet or to express any political or religious view. Tibet's fragile ecosystem is at the risk of the series of wrong development programs by the China in Tibet. The environmental situation is devastating, but we, the Tibetan people, will not give up. His Holiness' messages of peace, justice, and human rights will continue to inspire and guide us in our work for the more just and peaceful world. The Tibetan Women Associations continues to appeal for the rights of the people struggling under the Chinese repression. We all hope for the peaceful resolution to an ongoing situation in Tibet so that all Tibetans can return and live in freedom, safety, and dignity. Until then, we encourage the international community to keep Tibet and His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the spotlight to continue to support the Tibetans in their struggle for the freedom and autonomy. International organizations such as the United Nations can help by pressing the Chinese government to uphold its human rights obligation. Thank you. 다된데 배밀란의 맵에 우치치노 공색겜게 첨부 초구세 유링 때보다 배기 된다 뉴트세보다 아니 시제 배밀 냠섬 용백이 아니 자신면들 쉐이 터체나 대결로 Free Tibet Free Tibet Free Tibet 터체나 Let the Dalai Lama. Let the Dalai Lama. Let the Dalai Lama. Long live. Long live. Release. We want justice. We want justice. We want justice. Release all political prisoners. Release all political prisoners. Release all political prisoners. We want. Tibet belongs to. Tibet belongs to. Peggy Dakpo. United Nations. United Nations. Stop genocide. Stop genocide. Stop genocide. Stop genocide. Stop genocide. Free Tibet. Release all political prisoners. Release all political prisoners. Release all political prisoners. We want. United Nations. United Nations. Shame on China! 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 Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Learning Tibetan language! Learning Tibetan language! Tibet is burning! Tibet is burning! Tibet is burning! Tibet is burning! Release! Release! Release all political prisoners! Release all political prisoners! Release all political prisoners! We want! Tibet belongs to! Tibet belongs to! Peggy Dakpo!
Release all the political prisoners! Release all the political prisoners! We want freedom! Tibet belongs to! United Nations! United Nations! No more sleeping! No more sleeping! Shame on Chinese government! Shame on Chinese 아니 줄리 강전 정그 디링 링크 동대위 소신나야 강전 정표로나
드림팩의 사마라 티베트 준족사과 탑슈는 참리다 투제슈기 기용기 드라미 첩단 니말라 예기 티카셰지 인지토라슈기. On behalf of the Swiss Tibetan Friendship Association, I would like to address a few words to you on this important occasion. Human rights are universal rights we are supposed to have simply because we exist as human beings. But as we know, they are not granted everywhere and to everyone. The human rights situation in Tibet has worsened over decades, and the methods used by the occupying Chinese authorities to control Tibetans and punish even mild protest or dissent are concerning. Such measures include spying, and mass surveillance, arbitrary detention, collective punishment and torture, and which routinely result in the deaths of Tibetan political prisoners. With China systematically collecting DNA samples from Tibetans, including children as young as 5, a new low was reached. Officially, the collection is explained by the fact that crimes are solved, missing persons found, and social stability strengthened. However, DNA samples of 1.2 million Tibetans were taken to build an extensive genetic database that will add to Beijing's growing surveillance capabilities, giving Chinese authorities unprecedented power to monitor Tibetans and violate their privacy. A complicity in the mass theft of the Tibetan DNA is Thermo Fisher Scientific, a global company that has secured a number of deals with police forces in occupied Tibet for the supply of DNA kits. A joint letter from Tibet organizations was sent to the CEO, and the petition was launched by the International Tibet Network ITN. Moreover, China now operates illegal police stations around the world. The stations are described as service stations, where Chinese citizens living abroad can extend their driving licenses, report changes in their marital status, and carry out health checks, etc. In reality, though, these stations appear to be putting pressure on dissidents and other citizens, including members of the Tibetan diaspora, to give up their activities or even return. The governments of 14 countries have now launched investigations into these so-called service stations. Last but not least, an actual wind of change could be observed in China recently, even in China. There were protests against the controversial zero-COVID policy, where thousands took the streets. The protests were triggered by an apartment fire in Urumqi, the capital of the Uyghur Autonomous Region of Xinjiang. Protesters even dared to call Xi Jinping to step down, and chants seeking freedom were also heard. They literally risked their lives. The protests took place in Shanghai, Beijing, and many other parts of the country, nearly a month after Xi Jinping was elected as the ruling party's top leader for the third consecutive term. A clear and public distrust against the Xi Jinping regime could be observed, and the whole world was watching. In the meantime, the collective uproar from people has resulted in the loosening of the COVID restrictions. Still, the distrust in Xi Jinping's regime will not fade, and let's face it, the image of unquestioned and absolute control was undeniably broken. This, my fellow Tibetans and supporters, should really encourage us to keep advocating for the Tibetan cause, keep hoping, keep showing up at rallies like today, and keep fighting. Let me repeat once more, human rights are universal rights everyone is supposed to have. Long live His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Pegyalo! Pegyalo!
Stop culture genocide! Stop killing! Stop killing! Stop killing! Stop torturing! Stop torturing! Stop torturing! Stop torturing! No religious freedom!
구세 샤베 떼마쇼 시시 냠조 용하쇼